be here on behalf of the Irish Government to open Inspirefest and to offer a very special welcome, particularly to all of you who've travelled from overseas to be here. And I'm delighted the weather is so good, and I hope if you have travelled from overseas, you find a little bit of time to take a look around the city and maybe even get out of Dublin and see a little bit of the country as well. Ireland is at its best when the sun is shining, and it doesn't always happen, so you've permission for me to leave the conference at any time and check out the delights of Dublin, Ireland. Many of you will be familiar with one of Ireland's best-known scientists from history, and he's the mathematician and astronomer William Rowan Hamilton. He was an interesting person. He wrote poetry as well as mathematical equations. And some of his friends, including the poet William Wordsworth, encouraged him to concentrate on his scientific work rather than his art. But for Hamilton, maths and science were poetic in nature, and the highest praise he could bestow on any of his contemporaries was to say that he was a true poet in mathematics. And I think in many ways the fusion of science and the arts in Hamilton's thinking helped him to make some technological breakthroughs that were centuries ahead of their time. And when he carved some equations on a bridge in Dublin, not too far from here on Broome Bridge on the Royal Canal, in the middle of the 19th century, little did he realize at the time that these equations would be used as the basis for computer game graphics in the first part of the 21st century. He may never have imagined innovations such as FIFA 2017 or playing Wimbledon on a Wii, but his inspiration provided for other people the means to create a very different world. Writing about Hamilton, the mathematician and educator, Dr. Evie Ní Shúilleabháin, has rightly observed that there's much creativity and wonder to be found in the study of science. It's about so much more than numbers. And I think the problem sometimes is that we close our minds to imagination and to wonder. And in many ways, for me, that's the value of Inspirefest, because it does exactly what we should do. It challenges us to stretch our minds and reminds us what can be achieved if we don't allow ourselves to be limited or restricted in any way, and pushes us to try to do more and more still again. So for these reasons, I want to particularly thank Anne O'D and Silicon Republic for inviting me here today. Anne continues to expand Inspirefest every year, and every year there's a more interesting and thought-provoking programme. I also want to thank the many sponsors of the event for their involvement, including many world-leading companies who have operations here in Dublin, and through their sponsorship really make events like this possible. I also want to recognise a number of really interesting speakers that you have here today. Dr. Franz Cordova, head of the National Science Foundation, who I just met briefly, Marcus Weldon, president of Labs, who I met earlier on today, and many others who've travelled a long way to be here, to speak here. From walking around this morning, I think it's really clear that this event is something special and has captured the imagination of a broad and diverse group of people. In contrast to most science and technology conferences, I understand that here at this conference, 75% of the speakers are women, as are 65% of the attendees. And that shouldn't be an unusual thing, because to have a diverse and inclusive participation in any event shouldn't be something we remark on. It should, of course, be something that's normal. But it's not. And for that reason, we can't become complacent about driving change, and we can't assume that its progress is inevitable. Diversity is a strength, and I believe it's our differences that make us stronger. As one of your speakers recently argued, a diversity of approaches benefits the generation of communication of new knowledge, and both of these are vital to the success of science. Greater diversity makes for a better and more productive science and technology sector, not just here in Ireland, but in Europe and across the world. And in Ireland, we have always strived to be leaders in innovation, not just in STEM, in science, technology, engineering and maths, but also in the arts, or STEAM, as some people have started describing it. Inspirefest is a great example, therefore, of how science and technology and the arts are all part of one creative process. In this newly reformed government, I want there to be very special emphasis on culture and heritage. We're building on a very ambitious and exciting initiative, which is called our Creative Ireland programme, and that's led by Minister Heather Humphreys. It's going to run between now and 2022 and will place creativity at the centre of Irish public life and public policy for the first time. At its heart is enabling the creative potential of every child by giving them access to tuition through music, drama, art, and also coding. It's an unprecedented investment in every child in Ireland today, and we want to give every boy and girl growing up in Ireland today the opportunity to have their life shaped by exposure to the arts. We also want every community in all parts of the country to participate. We don't just want it to be something that happens in the capital or in the big cities. So already, each of the 31 local authorities around the country have developed their own local culture and creativity plan. And creativity and imagination are at the heart of the dramatic transformation facing so many industries today. The new industrial revolution, which is well underway, is driven by digital technologies and is transforming business models and changing the world as we speak. Trends like artificial intelligence, robotics, big data, and the Internet of Things are incredibly exciting, but they also challenge existing ways of thinking, of regulating, and create new forms of work. Possibly the biggest challenge that we face as human beings is climate change, and responding to global warming will require and test our collective creativity and imagination, and will force us and drive us to forge new technologies, which in many ways will provide many of the solutions. So I think this is a very exciting time for Ireland and for the sector. In Ireland, we're now emerging from a very deep economic crisis, and for the first time in a decade, we have a chance once again to be ambitious about the future of our country. We're starting once again to increase investment in research and innovation and finding more funding for higher education. And as a result, we're consistently improving in global rankings, dealing with strengths in specified fields like nanotechnology, animal and dairy chemistry, immunology, material science, as well as in our more traditionally strong areas like history, literature, and language. And as a small country with a very strong educational tradition and so many world-leading companies located here, I believe we can continue to lead the way as a location for research and innovation. The creativity and diversity which I see all around me today is at the heart of that ambition, and I know is a core priority of Inspirefest. It's important because role models are so often the inspiration for children and their ambitions. And your events help children and their parents to look at science as something that's creative and fun and full of opportunity. But this government wants diversity to be a strength in our education system as well, to help inspire the types of careers that men and women choose. And I know, for example, the superb work of one of your speakers, for example, Dr. Arlene O'Neill, and the Trinity Walton Club, who help equip, empower, and inspire future generations of scientists, engineers, and mathematicians. A politician once said, "Science contributes to our culture in many ways, as a creative intellectual activity in its own right, as a light which has served to illuminate our place in the universe, and as a source of understanding of our own nature." And so events like Inspirefest encourage new intellectual activity in the 21st century and illuminate and reflect the importance of a diverse community. A diversity that provides opportunities, such as the opportunity to progress and innovate, the opportunity to inspire, the opportunity to create a new type of country in which we all want to live and work and succeed. And I think it's true to the spirit of women and men who've been drivers of this change, pushing the boundaries of our knowledge and our imagination. And I think, going back to where I started, if he had been here today, William Rowan Hamilton, writing graffiti on his bridge, would have very much approved. So thank you very much, and hope you've a really enjoyable few days.